Every major financial collapse begins the same way, with something small that no one thinks matters. A single trade, a policy adjustment, a margin requirement that changes quietly in the night. Today wasn't small. Today, the system showed its hand. Silver didn't fall $15 in 4 hours because of market forces. It fell because someone decided it needed to fall. And the precision of that decision, the surgical nature of the execution, tells us everything we need to know about what happens when paper markets start losing control. This morning, silver touched $117.73 per ounce, the highest price in human history, a psychological barrier that analysts said would take years to breach. The bulls were celebrating. The stackers felt vindicated. For a brief moment, it seemed like decades of manipulation were finally ending. Then the kill switch activated. By early afternoon, silver had cratered to $103.89, 6.5% in a single session, nearly $14 per ounce vaporized, not gradually, not through natural selling pressure, through coordinated mechanical destruction that left no room for doubt about what had occurred. This is not new. We've seen this pattern before, and history tells us exactly what it means. In 1980, when silver surged toward $50 per ounce, the COMEX stepped in and restricted new long positions. They changed the rules in the middle of the game. The Hunt brothers, who were accumulating massive positions, were wiped out overnight. Silver collapsed from $50 to $11 in a matter of weeks. In 2011, when silver hit $49 and threatened to break the all-time high, the CME raised margins 5 times in 8 days. 5 times. They crushed the rally with surgical precision. Silver fell from $49 to $26, erasing years of gains in weeks. And now, in 2026, the pattern repeats. Silver breaks records. The exchange raises margins. The rally dies. This is not a free market. This is a controlled market, and the controllers are running out of options. Here's what they did this time. On January 7th, 2026, the CME Group announced a massive 47% increase in silver futures margin requirements. They raised the maintenance margin from $22,000 per contract to $32,500. That's an additional $10,500 per contract that every trader had to come up with immediately. Think about the mathematics. If you're holding 100 contracts, that's an additional $1,050,000 you need to wire to the exchange right now. If you're a retail trader with 10 contracts, that's an extra $105,000 you probably don't have sitting in your account. So what happens? You sell. You're forced to sell. Not because you think silver is going down, not because your thesis changed, but because the exchange changed the rules, and you don't have the liquidity to keep playing. This is the kill switch. This is how you crush a rally without firing a single bullet. You simply make it too expensive for anyone to hold their position. Silver had just broken through $110. Momentum was building. Short positions were getting squeezed. The physical market was screaming shortage. Lease rates had spiked to 8%. For context, normal lease rates hover around 3 to 0.5%. When lease rates hit 8%, it means the market is desperately short of physical metal. The exchange saw the freight train coming. They understood that if silver kept climbing, if it broke through $120, $130, $150, the entire paper market could implode. Banks that are short silver would face catastrophic losses. The system that allows them to control price with paper contracts would break down. So they pulled the kill switch. But here's what should disturb you most. This is not isolated manipulation. This is institutional behavior. And the institution doing the manipulating has a documented history of exactly this kind of market rigging. Let me give you a name. JP Morgan. In 2020, JP Morgan paid a record $920 million fine for manipulating precious metals markets. Not a conspiracy theory, a settled legal case. They admitted to spoofing, a practice where traders place fake orders to manipulate prices. They admitted to rigging the market for years. And today, JP Morgan is one of the largest players in the silver market. They are one of the primary dealers on the COMEX. They sit on one of the largest physical stockpiles of silver in the world. They have been on both sides of this game, shorting paper while accumulating physical. Systems don't behave like this when they're healthy. They behave like this when control is slipping. And the casualties reveal just how coordinated this attack was. In Rajkot, India, a major hub for silver trading, 44 silver trading firms declared insolvency in the wake of the margin hikes and price crash. Combined liabilities of $425 million. Not small-time speculators. Established trading houses that had been operating for years, destroyed in a single coordinated attack. The cruel irony? While these Indian firms were going bankrupt, the price of physical silver in India was soaring. On the multi-commodity exchange, silver hit a lifetime high of roughly $113 per ounce after conversion. The physical market was screaming by, but paper traders who were leveraged on margin were getting annihilated because the exchange changed the rules. They had the right thesis, they just had the wrong instrument. This bankruptcy wave in India is a microcosm of what's happening globally. Traders exposed to paper silver, playing the leverage game, getting crushed, not because they're wrong about silver, but because the system is designed to crush them when they threaten the status quo. And it's not just retail traders feeling the pain. According to the Qatar Commodity Futures Trading Commission's Commitment of Traders report, commercial banks were net short 212 million ounces of silver as of early December. 212 million ounces. Every dollar that silver rises costs these banks $212 million in paper losses. When silver moved from $80 to $117, that's a $37 move. That's $7.8 billion in losses for the shorts. Who has an incentive to crash the price? Who benefits when the exchange raises margins and forces liquidation? The banks that are short, the institutions that control the COMEX, the same players who have been fined for manipulation before. But here's what they can't control. They can manipulate the paper price. They can force liquidation in the futures market. They can crash the chart, but they cannot create physical silver. And that's where the real story begins. While the paper price was getting murdered in New York, something completely different was happening in the physical market. Reports from Japan indicate physical silver clearing at $130 per ounce. In Kuwait, $136. In South Korea, $127. Even in the United States, premiums on physical coins and bars have exploded. The spread between the futures price and what you actually have to pay to get metal in your hand has widened to levels we've never seen before. This is the great divorce. The paper market and the physical market are no longer speaking to each other. They're operating in different realities. The reason for this split is simple. There's not enough physical silver to meet demand at these paper prices. COMEX registered inventories have plummeted by over 70% since 2020. That means the amount of silver sitting in vaults, ready to be delivered to contract holders, has collapsed. We're talking about a drop from hundreds of millions of ounces to a fraction of that. Between early January and mid-January 2026, 33.45 million ounces were physically withdrawn from COMEX. That's 26% of registered inventory in a single week. When you see that kind of drain, when you see physical metal leaving the system at that pace, it's a sign that people no longer trust paper promises. They want the real thing. And when everyone wants the real thing at the same time, but the paper market keeps the price suppressed through margin hikes and forced liquidation, the system starts fracturing. This fracture is accelerating because of what happened on January 1st, 2026. China implemented one of the most aggressive export control regimes in modern commodity history. They reclassified silver as a strategic dual-use metal. You can no longer export silver from China without government approval. Why does this matter? Because China processes more than half of the world's silver supply. When China chokes off exports, they choke off global supply. The immediate effect has been a spike in premiums across Asia. In Shanghai, physical silver premiums over the London spot price have reached $8 per ounce, the widest spread on record. Chinese buyers are panic buying physical metal because they know that once export restrictions fully take hold, silver is going to become even harder to get. This isn't just about supply and demand. This is about weaponizing commodities. Silver is embedded in every piece of modern technology: solar panels, electric vehicle batteries, semiconductors, military electronics. When China controls the flow of silver, they control the flow of technology. They control the supply chains of the West. So while the paper price gets smashed on COMEX, the physical reality is this: silver is becoming a strategic asset. Governments are realizing that without silver, you can't build green energy infrastructure. You can't manufacture high-performance electronics. You can't compete in the technological race that defines modern power. If the physical market is so tight, if demand is so strong, if governments are hoarding and restricting exports, why isn't the price reflecting that reality? The answer is that the paper market is still in control. But that control is slipping. Every margin hike, every forced liquidation, every attempt to crush the rally is a sign of desperation. Because the more they manipulate the paper price, the more people realize the paper price is a lie. And when enough people realize the lie, they stop trading paper and start buying physical. That's when the system breaks. That's when COMEX is forced to declare cash settlement because they don't have the metal to deliver. That's when the paper price becomes irrelevant and the physical price becomes the only price that matters. We're not there yet, but we're getting close, and the attack we saw today is proof that the people running the system know it. For those holding physical metal, this is the moment where you understand your position. You're not holding a paper promise. You're not exposed to margin calls. You're not at risk of forced liquidation. You are holding a real asset that cannot be printed, cannot be rehypothecated, and cannot be seized by an exchange rule change. The people who got wiped out in this attack were playing the paper game. The people who survive are the ones holding the metal. There are 3 possible scenarios for what happens next. Scenario 1, the system resets higher. The paper market admits defeat and allows the price to rise to a level that reflects physical reality. Silver moves to 150, 200, or higher as paper shorts are forced to cover. Scenario 2, the divorce becomes permanent. The paper price and physical price never converge. COMEX continues trading paper contracts at suppressed prices, but nobody cares because the physical market has moved on. Scenario 3, force majeure and system collapse. Demand for physical delivery overwhelms available supply. COMEX declares force majeure and settles contracts in cash instead of metal. The entire pricing mechanism breaks down. In this scenario, the paper price crashes because nobody trusts it anymore, but the physical price explodes because the only way to get silver is through the physical market, and supply is finite. This has almost happened before. In March 2020, during the COVID panic, the gold futures market nearly broke because physical delivery became impossible. The premium on physical gold coins spiked to $50 over spot price. The system came within days of a force majeure declaration. If silver goes down that path, if COMEX has to declare force majeure, it will mark the end of paper-based price discovery for precious metals. The attack on silver today, the margin hike, the forced liquidation, these are all signs that we're moving toward one of these scenarios. The paper market is fighting for survival. They're using every tool they have to maintain control. But every time they pull the kill switch, they weaken their own credibility. Think about it. If you're a physical silver buyer in China or India and you see COMEX crash the price by $14 in 4 hours through a margin hike, does that make you trust the COMEX price? No. It makes you realize the COMEX price is manipulated fiction. Physical buyers around the world are decoupling from COMEX. They're building their own pricing networks based on actual supply and demand in their regions. And as more of the world does this, COMEX becomes less and less relevant. What you saw today was not market forces at work. It was not natural price discovery. It was the desperate action of a system that knows its time is running out. The paper market can win battles. It can crash the price for hours or days, but it cannot win the war because it cannot create physical supply. This is a war of attrition. And the shorts are losing. Yes, they can manipulate. Yes, they can coordinate attacks. Yes, they can change rules and force liquidation. But they cannot change physics. They cannot change geology. They cannot change the fact that real assets always outlast paper promises. Empires don't collapse overnight. They unravel quietly through small compromises and desperate measures. And then, all at once, the foundation gives way. Today's attack wasn't strength, it was response. And desperate responses reveal more than intended victories ever could. The system showed its hand today. The question is whether you were paying attention.